Rate Saturday's college football YouTube channel. Welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mid-American Conference predictions for this season. So we went over the Power 5, I did the Independents, and now I did the American Athletic Conference as well as Conference USA. So now we have 3 more conferences to get to before the start of the 2023 season. I'm going to try to put these videos out as fast as I also can. I'm also starting a series for this year where I rank the top 10 games heading into each week of the college football season. And I'm also going to be doing videos where I take a look at the point spread, betting lines, and making my picks for each week. So I'll also have those videos out for you. I said I'll be getting to other things on the channel other than just these predictions, and I'm gonna make sure that happens. So today we're gonna continue with the 2023 Mid-American Conference season predictions. Now, this is one of the few conferences in college football that decides to use the division alignment. So there's 2 divisions to get through. So in the previous videos with divisions, like the Big Ten and the SEC, I'm going to be going through every team in a particular division first, and then I'll go through the next division. So I'll start with the East Division, which features Akron, Bowling Green, Buffalo, Kent State, Miami of Ohio, and Ohio. And then I'll just do the West Division, which includes Ball State, Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Northern Illinois, Toledo, and Western Michigan. So without further ado, we're going to start on here with the Akron Zips to start the East Division. Now, Akron is head coached by Joe Moorhead, who's in his 2nd year at the University of Akron. The Zips last year finished with the putrid 2-10 record, 1-7 in the MAC. They're not supposed to be one of the better teams in the MAC again this season. It is possible that they could improve on what we saw last year, and I think that is possible. But as far as them winning a bunch of football games and being in contention, they're still a long way away from doing so. So when you look at their schedule, they're on the road for 3 of their 4 non-conference games, and 2 of those games are against Power 5 opponents. So those 3 road games, you got September 2nd at Temple, then September 16th at Kentucky, and then September 23rd at Indiana. They have to face Northern Illinois and Eastern Michigan in cross-division games. And my realistic expectation for the Akron Zips is anywhere from 2 to 5 wins. I do think they're going to squeak out a couple of conference wins, but that tough non-conference schedule, which features Kentucky and Indiana, and also to a certain extent Temple, as well as the other teams that they play in their MAC schedule, they're going to be really, really tough. There's a lot of good teams on the schedule that Akron has to play. And it's going to be another long season for them. So starting off, I see them losing the first game of the season at Temple. Talked about Temple in my American Athletic Conference video. I just think they're going to have a better season than last year. I think Temple under Sean Drayton will improve. But obviously, I don't think they're going to be good enough to make a bowl. I mean, it's possible they can make a bowl game, but I just think they won't be at that level yet. But I think Temple will be vastly improved from last year. So I see Akron picking up a loss in that game. However, they draw back to 500 with an easy win at home against Morgan State. Morgan State comes from the FCS. I believe they're one of the HBCUs as well. So, they come from the FCS. That's a game that Akron could lose, but I don't see them losing that game at all. So I'll give them a win there. Then I see them dropping their next 2 games at Kentucky and at Indiana. Indiana's not going to be that good of a team this season, but I still think they're good enough to at least be a MAC team. Kentucky's going to be one of the decent teams in the SEC, because you have your elite teams, then you have your decent teams, then you have your bad teams in the SEC. Kentucky will be in the mix for one of the better teams in the conference this year, as they were last year. And they've been for a while now in the SEC, so I think they're going to lose both those games. It is interesting to note, though, that I believe that the Indiana game is going to be somewhat more competitive than the Kentucky game. I think that Akron will stick around. They will hang around for most of the game, but Indiana will pull away late, but we'll see what happens to that. Then I see them picking up a win on September 30th against Buffalo at home. Although Buffalo is supposed to be in the race for the MAC East Division this year, I do think that they're not good enough to avoid a letdown game, and this is a letdown game. So I'll just go with that prediction. So I think they'll beat Buffalo to get to 2-3. Then they'll get to 2-6 as they drop 3 consecutive games before the bye week. They got Northern Illinois, Central Michigan, and Bowling Green. I think that all three teams will beat Akron. I just don't think that Akron is good enough to beat any of those teams. At least any of the better teams than what they are. Buffalo is somewhat better than Akron, but I just think that Buffalo is not going to have a tremendous season this year. I think that it is possible that they can get to a bowl game, but I don't know. It just depends on what happens with that team over the course of the season. And I think that they're not going to be good enough to avoid a loss to Akron, so it is possible. But Northern Illinois, Central Michigan, and Bowling Green, I don't know. I don't see them winning those games. So 2-6. Then after the bye week, they got to take on Kent State, and I project Kent State to be the worst team in the conference this season. So I'll give them a win against Kent State, but then they'll lose against the rest of their opponents. They have Miami of Ohio on Wednesday, November 11th. They have Eastern Michigan on Tuesday, November 14th. And they have a Friday night game versus one of the top contenders in the MAC, which is Ohio, on November the 24th. So overall, I don't see Akron having a great year this year, but I do think they'll improve a little bit from last year's mark. And I see them finishing 3-9 and 2-6 in the MAC. Now, as far as other games that they could win, I could take a look at that Temple game, the first game of the season. It's possible they could win that. The Indiana game is a possible win. Then also I think the Central Michigan game is a possible win. Maybe the Bowling Green game. But I just don't think they'll get to 6 wins this season. So really, you can pick any other game on here and say, okay, that's a winnable game, that's a winnable game. The Temple game, Indiana, Northern Illinois to a certain extent, Central Michigan. Every team on this schedule other than Ohio, Akron can beat. I just don't have confidence that they will be able to do that. So as a result, I see them finishing 3-9 and then 2-6 in the MAC conference this year. All right, so now we're getting into the Bowling Green Falcons. Now Bowling Green, they're head coached by Scott Leffler, who's in his 5th year. He doesn't have a great record at 13-29, but last season Bowling Green was able to make a breakthrough as they went 5-3 in the MAC, 6-7 overall. They made it to the Quick Lane Bowl, but they lost to upset-minded New Mexico State. But overall, it was a pretty good year for Bowling Green. They haven't been to a bowl game in a long, long time, so I'm pretty happy for them. Now for this year, they have 3 road non-conference dates with Liberty, Michigan, and Georgia Tech. So a really, really tough non-conference schedule that sees them play, 2 top teams in their conferences and then a decently tough team in Georgia Tech. Obviously, I don't think that Georgia Tech's going to be a great team this season, but for Bowling Green, it's going to be tough to go to Atlanta. They do not avoid the top 2 contenders in the MAC, so they got to play Toledo as a cross-division opponent, and since Ohio's in their division, it's required for them to play them. Now, realistic expectations, I have this team anywhere going from 5 to 7 wins. So starting off the season, I see them losing 5 of their first 6 games. They'll lose to Liberty on September the 2nd, to Michigan on September the 16th, to Ohio on September the 23rd, to Georgia Tech on September the 30th, and then to Miami of Ohio on October the 7th. As you can see here, their first 6-game stretch is extremely difficult. They have Liberty, Michigan, Ohio, Georgia Tech, and Miami of Ohio. The Miami of Ohio game, they could win that. And it's also possible that if they play well, they could beat Georgia Tech, but I just don't see that happening. And then forget about the dates with Liberty, Michigan, and Ohio. But I see them picking up a win on September 9th against Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois is from the FCS, so I think Bowling Green should be able to do well against them. But after the first 6-game stretch, I see Bowling Green ending the year off on a hot streak. They'll win their next 4 games. They have 2 games in between the bye week, so I see them picking up a win at Buffalo on October the 14th and versus Akron on October the 21st to get to 3-5. Then they have the bye week, and this is where the MACtion schedule starts on weekdays. So they have a couple Wednesday night games, one against Ball State at home on November the 1st, and one on the road against Kent State on November the 8th. I think they'll win both those games. Those are Wednesday night games. And then they'll lose to Toledo on Tuesday, November 14th. But then I see them picking up a win late in the year, the last game of the season, on the road against Western Michigan on Tuesday, November the 21st, to see them finishing at 6-6 and 5-3 in the MAC. So this should be another decent year for Bowling Green. I don't think many people are expecting Bowling Green to do well, but I really believe that Bowling Green could make another bowl game again this season and be a contender in the MAC. It's going to be the great thing about the MAC conference this season is that it's a really tight conference. There's going to be, really tight competition in both divisions. So the division races, even though they have some true contenders, they're going to be in a dogfight for a while. And I believe that Boston College, I almost said Boston College. I do believe that Bowling Green will be in the division race for most of the season. But I think that several key losses to other conference opponents will knock them out. But they will be in the race for a little while, and it will be a successful season. So 6-6 and 5-3 for Bowling Green. Alright, so now let's transition into our third team in the East Division, and that is the Buffalo Bulls. Now, Buffalo, they're head coached by Maurice Lindquist, and Lindquist has done a decent job as the Buffalo head coach. He's in his third year at Buffalo. He has an 11-14 record, but last season was his first bowl appearance, I believe. And that was, so Buffalo, they went 6-6 in the regular season and 5-3 in the MAC. However, they won the Camellia Bowl against Georgia Southern to improve to 7-6 and have a winning season. They were pretty good last year, and they are expected to be one of the better teams in the East Division. However, they have a tough non-conference slate with games at Wisconsin versus Liberty and even at Louisiana. And that's during the first 4 weeks of the season. Then they have one throw-in against Fordham, who's a local school, because Buffalo's in New York and then Fordham's in the Bronx. So it's a local school coming in to play a Division 1A or an FBS team. So they have a tough non-conference schedule. And then they also have to play Toledo as a cross-division game, which is going to be really, really difficult for the Bulls. But, like I said earlier, they should still be considered one of the top teams in the East Division. As you can see on the bottom, I have them finishing with a record of 5-7. Now, I see their realistic expectations can go from anywhere from 5 to 7 wins. I don't know if they're going to be able to get to that mark. They're not a bad team. It's just that the schedules that I have regarding this Buffalo team are placed within the schedule. Because I don't think that a lot of these games Buffalo has a chance at winning, just because, yes, they're going to have a chance to win most of these games. But what I mean by that is that the way the schedule was played out and the way it's worked and the way the games are aligned, I don't know if Buffalo is really going to be able to pull off another bowl campaign. But we'll see. It's definitely possible. Now, as far as starting off the season, I have them losing 4 of their first 5 games. The one win in that stretch in September will come against Fordham on September the 9th. Every other game is going to be a loss at Wisconsin. The week before the Fordham game will be a loss. Then the 3 weeks after the Fordham game will all be losses. So versus Liberty on the 16th, at Louisiana Lafayette on the 23rd, and then I see them picking up an upset loss against Akron on the 30th. Now that Akron game, it's possible they could win that game. Although, like I said earlier, I don't think that Buffalo is good enough to avoid a letdown game against the worst opponent. Because if you look on paper, Buffalo is a better team than Akron is. But again, I don't know if I don't have that much confidence in Buffalo to where they can, just win the games that they're supposed to win. They will be able to win some of the games that they're supposed to win, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do that for every single game they're supposed to win. So as a result, I'll give them a loss against Akron. But then I see them picking up a win against Central Michigan to put them in a position of 2-4. Then they lose to Bowling Green on October the 14th to get to 2-6. However, before the bye week, they'll beat lowly Kent State on October the 21st to get to 3-6. So definitely not a bad, or 3-5. So 3-5. I miscount sometimes. I apologize for that. So 3-5 before the bye week. So not a terrible position to be in. But then after the bye week, look who they got to play. They got to play Toledo on the road on Tuesday, Halloween day or Halloween night. And I don't think that Buffalo's going to be able to pull that one out. So I see them picking up a loss to get to 3-6. But then I think they'll win their next 2 games to get to 5-6 against Ohio. I think they'll pull off an upset against Ohio. and then they'll beat Miami of Ohio or Miami University on the road to set up a do-or-die final regular season game against the Eastern Michigan Eagles on Tuesday, November the 21st. And sadly, I think that Buffalo will lose that game. It is possible they could win that game since that's a home game. It's the last game of the year. And last year, Buffalo ended up playing Akron when they were in the same situation at home, and they ended up coming through and they won that game to get to bowl eligibility. So that could be the same situation that's presented here, but I don't know if it's gonna happen the second time around. So I see Buffalo finishing 5-7 and 4-4 in the MAC. It is possible they can win a couple more games. I look at that Louisiana game as one of them. That's possibly they could win. Of course, it's possible they could win against Akron on September the 30th. And you could also throw in games against Bowling Green and Eastern Michigan as possible wins. I just don't think they'll get past 7 wins this season. I would be shocked if they do. But yeah, I have them finishing 5-7 and 4-4 in the MAC. Not a bad team. Buffalo's not a bad team. I just don't think that they'll be able to replicate what they did last season that much. Now let's transition over to the Kent State Golden Flashes, and oh boy, that's all I really have to say for Kent State. Kent State, I feel extremely bad for. So they're head coached by Kenny Burns. This is his first year at Kent State. Last season they went 5-7 under Sean Lewis, who now has left Kent State to get a job as the offensive coordinator for the University of Colorado. So that just goes to show you where Kent State is as a program. They lost their head coach that brought them to phenomenal success, probably their most successful run of football in Kent State's history. Has just come to an end last season. They went 500 in the MAC, but they had a difficult non-conference schedule that allowed them to finish with a losing record. And they're going to have a difficult non-conference schedule again, just because of the fact that that they play UCF, Arkansas, and Fresno State. And they just lost a bunch of players to the transfer portal, man. They lost running back Marquez Cooper to Ball State, which is the most notable because he was probably their best player. And, they just lost a whole bunch of their top weapons, especially on offense. And as you can see, I do not think that Kent State is going to be good this year. With all the losses that they suffered through the coaching staff and the player roster, I don't think that Kent State is going to be good this year. I think that, a likely 1-3 start looms with UCF, Arkansas, and Fresno State as non-conference opponents. And then they have their 3 cross-division games come against 3 pretty damn good teams. They got to play Eastern Michigan, Ball State, and Northern Illinois. And then on top of that, they got to play everybody else from the MAC East division. So overall, I just do not think that it's going to be a great year for Kent State. Realistic expectations, I had Kent State going from anywhere from 1 to 3 wins. They're definitely going to win against Central Connecticut State on September the 16th, or at least I hope for their sake. But every other game, it's going to be a grind for them to win. They might get blown out, or they might lose in close fashion. It's going to be one of those teams that just loses games in a variety of ways this season. Now, they have 2 bye weeks this year. They got to play week 1 on a Thursday night at UCF. That's going to be on Fox Sports 1, by the way. And I don't think, UCF is favored by a ton of points. I think they're favored by 30 points in that game, and rightfully so. I think that'll be a loss. Then they have a bye week, and then they got to play Arkansas on the road on September the 9th. That'll be a loss. Then they'll pick up a win against Central Connecticut State from the FCS. Then they got to play another road game on September the 23rd against Fresno State. So that's 3 road games in their first 4 matches. And then after that, that's when conference play starts. But then I see them going winless in conference play, a perfect 0-8 or an imperfect 0-8. They're just not going to be good, man. They're going to be a really bad team this year. I see them losing to every single conference opponent. They got to play Miami of Ohio at home on September the 30th. That'll be a loss. Then Ohio on the road on October. That'll be a loss. Eastern Michigan on the road. That'll be a loss. Buffalo. That'll be a loss. Then they have a bye week after the Buffalo game. Then they have 2 weekday games against Akron and Bowling Green to start the November schedule. Those will be losses. Then they got to go on the road against Ball State. That'll be a loss. And then against Northern Illinois to finish the season. Against an improved Northern Illinois team, that'll be a loss too. So overall, I don't see Kent State being really good this season. I don't know what to expect from them other than a losing season. Now, other games they could win, I look at the schedule and I'm like, well, it's going to be a grind, but it's possible they could beat Miami of Ohio, It's possible they could beat Eastern Michigan or Buffalo. Akron can be a win. But other than that, I don't really see it. I don't see it. The Akron game, the Akron and Buffalo games are the most likely wins to get to 3 out of this schedule. They're the most likely games that could be wins. But then Miami of Ohio and Eastern Michigan, they could probably be wins as well. But I don't have confidence in this Kent State team to be able to get more than the 1 win I have projected here. So 1-11 overall for Kent State and 0-8 in the MAC. And then now let's transition now to the second to last team in the MAC East Division, and that is the Miami of Ohio Redhawks, or if you just want to say Miami University, you can say that as well. So Miami University, they're head coached by Chuck Martin, and to say that Chuck Martin has revitalized Miami's football program has been an understatement. Even though he has a losing record at 45-59, it took him a long time to get to where Miami of Ohio is now. I remember when he first started his tenure at Miami, and it was just dismal. It was just a disaster. But he's been able. He's gotten patience from Miami University's athletic director staff and everybody who's involved, and he's rewarded them with probably one of the best runs for Miami Redhawk football in a long, long time. Last season, they went 6-7, a mediocre 6-7. But they went 500 in the MAC at 4-4. They lost the Bahamas Bowl to UAB. To end the season at 6-7. But this year should be a little bit different. It should be better, at least before the postseason starts. 2 wins should come from the non-conference slate. Their non-conference slate features a Friday game against Miami of Florida on the road. I'll make sure to edit that because never mind, I can't, never mind, because I already have it. But yeah, Miami of Florida. Miami Hurricanes, they start the season off on Friday, September 1st. Then they got to play UMass on September the 9th on the road. Then they got to play their annual rivalry game against Cincinnati on September the 16th. And then they got to play Delaware State from the FCS on September the 23rd. So really, their non-conference schedule sets them up to have at least 2 wins. They'll definitely beat UMass and they'll definitely beat Delaware State. It is possible that they could also squeak out one of the wins against Miami and Cincinnati. They're definitely not a team. Cincinnati and Miami, they're definitely not teams that Miami of Ohio cannot win against. It's possible, and I would not be shocked if they do win those games. Now, they will be a contender in the MAC East Division. I don't know if they're going to come out of the division in first place at the end of this season, but they'll definitely be a contender. I forgot to fill out the realistic expectations, but you could probably say realistic expectations. You can pretty much get from anywhere from 6 to, I want to say, 8 wins. I think they'll lose one of those games to Miami or Cincinnati, and I don't think that they'll be either Toledo or Ohio, which I have them scheduled losses. So I have them losing to Miami of Florida, Cincinnati, Toledo, Ohio, and then Buffalo in an upset loss on Wednesday, November 15th. I talked about Buffalo a little while ago, and I think that Buffalo is capable of upsetting a better team in their division, because I do think that Miami University is a better team than Buffalo. So I think they'll lose. But other than that, I think they'll win several games. I think they'll beat UMass, they'll beat Delaware State, and then they'll beat Kent State easily to close out September. Then they'll start October with a couple of key wins against Bowling Green and at Western Michigan. They'll lose the Toledo and Ohio games before the bye week, but then they have 2 Wednesday night games. Both of them are at home. They'll win at least one of them, and that's against Akron, that 1 win. And then I think they'll beat Ball State on the road on November 25th to finish the year at 7-5 overall and 5-3 in the MAC. I have really high expectations for Miami this season, and I believe that this could potentially be the best year that Miami has had in quite a while. They did make the conference title game several years back, and they could make it back this year again, and it's possible they could even have an 8-win season or a 9-win season depending on how things play out. But Miami, they're going to be a good football team in this conference this year. Do not sleep on them. They could do some damage for sure. Now let's finish off the East Division with the best team in the division in my opinion, and that's the Ohio Bobcats. Ohio, they're head coached by Tim Albin, who's in his 2nd year at Ohio. He has a 13-13 record, but last year was really good for him, as they finished the year 10-4 and 8-1 in the MAC. Unfortunately, they lost the MAC championship game to Toledo, but they were able to win the Arizona Bowl versus Wyoming. They have a potential for an unbeaten record in the non-conference slate, because if you look at their non-conference slate, they don't have to play Toledo. Ball State's not on there either, so a lot of the stronger teams from the West Division aren't on the schedule. Eastern Michigan's not on there as well. So, you know, their cross-division games feature Central Michigan, Western Michigan, and Northern Illinois. Two of those teams might be mediocre this year with Western Michigan and Central Michigan. And then you have Northern Illinois, who's an improved team, but I don't know if they're good enough to actually beat Ohio in this situation. So really, it is possible for Ohio to finish undefeated in conference play, but not only in conference play, but overall. As you can see by my realistic expectations meter, I have them getting anywhere from 8 to 12 wins, and they will be contenders in the MAC East race, primarily with Miami of Ohio as well as Buffalo. But this is the team. Ohio is the team in the East Division that you have to get through if you want to win this damn thing. And I think that they're going to be the team that teams are going to have to get through and that they're not going to be able to. As you can see by my record prediction, I have Ohio finishing 10-2 and 7-1 in the MAC. Their one loss in conference play will come against at Buffalo on Tuesday, November 7th. And then the other loss will come earlier in the year in the fourth game of the season versus Iowa State. Now, Iowa State's a game that Ohio could win. I know that Ohio State's from the Big 12 conference and it's a bigger conference, but overall, I just, personally, I think that they're good enough to beat Iowa State. So it is possible. And then also, Ohio's good enough to beat Buffalo for sure, but I just see them having a couple of hiccups during the season. And there'll be the two losses there, but every other game I think will be a win. The San Diego State game on August 26th is the best game, in my opinion, during the Week 0 schedule, because I do count Week 0 as a separate week, unlike most people. So they have the Week 0 game against San Diego State, and if they get by them, then they could potentially start 3-0, because I see them beating Long Island, and I also see them beating FAU on September the 9th. Then they have that Iowa State game. Then they got to play Bowling Green before the bye. And then they have Kent State, Northern Illinois, Western Michigan, and Miami of Ohio before another bye week. And the bye week is when they got to play 3 consecutive weekday games. Like I said, they'll lose to Buffalo. Even though there's a better chance for Ohio to beat Buffalo, I think they'll lose to Buffalo. Then they'll beat Central Michigan and Akron. So overall, solid team for Ohio this year. Not really much else to say because, quite frankly, we all know that Ohio is the class of this division, and it's not even close. There's several other decent teams like Miami and probably Buffalo and Bowling Green, but overall, Ohio is the team to get through in the East Division if teams want to get to the MAC championship game. So, overall, I see Ohio finishing 10-2 and 7-1 in the MAC conference. Do not be surprised if Ohio is able to find themselves in a position to where they could go 12-0 in the regular season, 13-0 in the MAC championship, and they could possibly find themselves as the Group of 5 champion and play in one of the New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't be surprised if that actually happens. And now we're going to start the West Division. So we just completed the East Division. Now we're transitioning over to the West. And the first team in the West Division that we'll be talking about in alphabetical order is my favorite college football team, the Ball State Cardinals, who are head coached by Mike Hanu. New former quarterback at Ball State in the early 90s, is in his 8th year as the head coach, and to be honest with you, he has been nothing but disappointing in my opinion. I know this team more than any other team, and I'm probably the biggest critic of Mike Hanu as a Ball State fan. I personally do not think he's fit to be a head coach. I don't think he is a good head coach, and I don't think that he hires the right people that allow us to be consistently successful. I'm not a fan of his personality or his coaching style, and that's resonated in his stats here. So he has a 33-48 record, and last season he went 5-7 and 3-5 in the MAC. And just to prove that why I think Mike Hanu was such a terrible coach, I blame him as the reason as to why we had a collapse, because Ball State We were 5-4 at one point in the season. All we had to do was win one of our last 3 games to make it to a bowl game, and we lost the last 3 games. We had a lead against Miami of Ohio in the final game of the season, and we blew it. And as a result, we missed the bowl season. So 5-7 last year, 3-5 in the MAC. And if you're being honest, if I'm being honest, I don't really have that much confidence in this team to succeed this season. They have a tough non-conference slate with games at Kentucky, at Georgia, and versus Georgia Southern. And they also have a couple non-rivalry cross-division games with a terrible Kent State team and a pretty damn good Bowling Green team. And I say non-rivalry cross-division games because one of our cross-division games is an annual rivalry against Miami of Ohio, which is the Redbird Rivalry Trophy game. So yeah, realistic expectations, this team minimum can get from 5 wins in my opinion. I believe they can get at least to 5 wins. And the max they can get is 6. I should put 3 to 6 wins here, but I'm being lenient. I don't think they're going to get only 3 wins this season. They could get a couple more. But yeah, 5 to 6 wins max. We did bring in a promising running back from Kent State called Marquez Cooper. He's one of the best running backs in the nation, so he should be one of our biggest offensive weapons. And we have the best tight end in the MAC and Brady Hunt. But I don't have that much confidence in the rest of this offense. Our receiving corps are devastated. New quarterback, a lot, only 3 starters from the offensive line come back. They weren't all that good last year either. Defense has a lot of turnover. It's just not a great year for Ball State in my opinion. I see us starting the season off 0-2 to Kentucky and Georgia in blowouts. Then I see us beating Indiana State on September the 16th. Then we'll lose to Georgia Southern on September the 23rd. Then we'll get back-to-back wins to get to 3-3 against Western Michigan and Eastern Michigan. Then I see us losing to Toledo on October the 14th. That game should be a blowout. And then I see us beating Central Michigan to get to 4-4. So a decent start to the season to their first 8 games, a 4-4 mark. But then the November from hell comes around the corner. If there's a team that has folded at the end of the season every single year in November, it's been Ball State. Every single November, they've just folded like a dollar suit in the rain. I mean, seriously, they folded like an umbrella in the rain. They've been completely terrible in November, and I believe that they will be terrible once again in November as we got to play Bowling Green, Northern Illinois, Kent State, and Miami of Ohio. 3 of those teams I think we're going to lose to, and obviously we'll get the 1 win versus Kent State. But the November from hell theme will continue for Ball State in my opinion, and as a result, I see us finishing 5-7 and 4-4 in the MAC. Typical Ball State standards, they always fall way short of expectations year in and year out. They always employ the worst people to be the coaching, to do coaching. Penalties have been a problem for this Ball State team for several years now, and obviously Mike New, being a nonchalant, undisciplined person, has that non-disciplined play from his players, and as a result, which is why we fail time in and time again. So overall, if we're gonna lose this year again, hopefully that means we fire Mike New. I really do not want him back as head coach next season, unless if he has a winning season, which I doubt it. So 5-7 for Ball State, my prediction, and 4-4 in the MAC. This is as low as I can possibly get for my team. Nothing but pure disappointment, and hopefully if we have a losing season, hopefully that coincides with Mike New and the coaching staff getting fired, because I think they're overrated commodities in my opinion, and they do not deserve to have the jobs that they have. As a Ball State fan, very frustrated with this coaching staff, do not like them at all, and I think we're not going to have a good year. So overall 5-7 and 4-4 in the MAC. Alright, so then now let's transition over to the Central Michigan Chippewas, the 2nd team in the 6-team division. Central Michigan head coach by Jim McElwain, who's at his 5th year at the school. The Chippewas finished a disappointing 4-8 last season and 3-5 in the MAC. They have 3 tough non-conference road games against Michigan State, Notre Dame, and South Alabama. They have several cross-division games featuring Buffalo, Akron, and Ohio. My realistic expectation for Central Michigan, sort of on the fence, either from a losing season to a winning season. It's one of those teams that I don't know what we're gonna get from, what we're gonna see from them this year, because it's funny because I read a post on some website previewing Central Michigan's season, and it starts off the article saying that Jim McElwain has never had 2 bad years in a row. So I don't know where to go with this Central Michigan team, but I read about them a little bit, and there seems to be a lot of questions regarding their roster. They do return some players, but some of their better players have left. So, you really don't know what you're going to get. This team definitely is talented enough to at least be in a bowl game, but they're also untalented enough to not be in a bowl game, So it's sort of a 50-50 toss-up season for Central Michigan. As you can see, I have them leaning on the losing season side. I see them losing 3 of their first 4 games to Michigan State, Notre Dame, and South Alabama. They do have that game against New Hampshire from the FCS on September the 9th, so that should be a win. Then I see them opening up conference season with a pretty good, respectable record. Eastern Michigan on September the 30th puts them at 1-0 in the conference and 2-3 overall. Then I see them losing to Buffalo on October the 7th. Then they'll alternate wins and losses the rest of the way before the bye week. So they'll beat Akron on October the 14th. Then they'll lose to Ball State on October the 21st on the road. Then they have the bye week, so they're pretty much 3-5 by the bye week. I see them beating Northern Illinois to start MACtion play on Tuesday, Halloween night, to get to 4-5. And then I see them getting eliminated from bowl contention after the losses to Western Michigan and Ohio. I do think that Western Michigan's going to pull out some conference wins, and I think Central Michigan will at least be one of the victims of a conference loss, a game that they shouldn't lose to on the road, but that's just the situation here. So I see them losing to Western Michigan and Ohio, and then I see them finishing the season off with an upset win against Toledo on Friday, November 24th. Again, this team is talented enough to where they can get a couple upsets, probably on the road or at home, depending on who they play. But also, this team has too many question marks, at least for me, not to be able, that prevents them from getting a lot of confidence from me to put them in a bowl game. I don't know where Central Michigan's gonna go this season. I won't be surprised if they make a bowl game, but I wouldn't be surprised if they missed a bowl season either. So I have Central Michigan finishing 5-7 overall and 4-4 in the MAC this season. Should be interesting to see where this team goes heading from here, but it's more of an unknown at this point. So yeah, that's where I see Central Michigan finishing. Alright, now let's move over to Central Michigan's biggest rival, and that's the Eastern Michigan Eagles, head coached by Chris Creighton, who's at his 10th year at Eastern Michigan. And although his overall record doesn't really say that he's been a good coach, since he has a 46-61 record, he's really given Eastern Michigan new life into a program that really hasn't seen much football success since 1987. So he came, I believe, in 2012 or 2013, and he's helped revitalize this Eastern Michigan football program. And it's gotten to a point now where Eastern Michigan is no longer the biggest laughingstock in the conference, as they've been one of the more respectable teams in the conference over the last several seasons. I believe 4 or 5 years. Last season, Eastern Michigan had a phenomenal year as they went 9-4, 5-3 in the MAC, and they won the famous Idaho Potato Bowl against San Jose State. They have a very favorable schedule non-conference wise, as Minnesota is the only Power 5 conference opponent. The other non-conference opponents include UMass, Jacksonville State, and Howard. So the worst case scenario is that they'll go 2-2. Best case scenario, possibly 4-0, because Minnesota is not the best school in the world, so Eastern Michigan could possibly upset Minnesota. I would not be shocked if they do. Very so a schedule, very favorable schedule, and they could be one of the more legitimate contenders for the MAC West Division title. It's been for several years now that Eastern Michigan should be on the cusp of reaching the MAC title game, and they've been close several times. I don't know if they're going to get to there this season, but they are a talented ball club, and as long as Chris Creighton is the head coach at Ypsilanti, they're going to be fine. So I see Eastern Michigan starting off the season with winning 2 of their first 4 games, which are non-conference. I see them picking up wins against Howard and UMass before they lose to Minnesota and Jacksonville State. The Minnesota and Jacksonville State games will be on the road. It's highly likely that Jacksonville State will lose to Eastern Michigan, but I gave Jacksonville State a win there anyway. I just think that Eastern Michigan might come out a little flat in that game. Jacksonville State's, of course, they're going to want to try to prove that they belong at the FCS level as best as possible. So I think they'll beat Eastern Michigan. But then they open up conference play and they lose their first 2 games in conference play to drop to 2-5. I see them losing to Central Michigan and Ball State. Then I see them picking up a win against Kent State on October the 14th. Then they'll lose to Northern Illinois. And then they'll follow that up with a good win versus Western Michigan at home on October the 28th. So heading into the bye week, I see Eastern Michigan finishing with a 4-5 record. Then I see them picking up their 6th loss of the year against Toledo on Wednesday night on November 8th. But then in a do-or-die situation, I see them winning their last 2 games of the year against Akron and against Buffalo. The way the schedule is set up for Eastern Michigan really goes toward their favor, because at the end of the season, yes, they do play Toledo, but they also play a couple teams that I believe they're better than when comparing themselves to Akron and Buffalo. I believe that Eastern Michigan is better than both of those teams, and I think that they will beat both of those teams to get to bowl eligibility once again with the 6-6 record and 4-4 record in the MAC conference. So it's possible. Now, my realistic expectations, I can see them getting up to 10 wins. It's possible they could beat Jacksonville State, Central Michigan, Ball State, and Northern Illinois. It's even possible they could beat Minnesota, although I don't see that happening. But those 4 games against Jacksonville State, Central Michigan, Ball State, and Northern Illinois could all result in wins. I just think that they will get some bad breaks this season. Eastern Michigan really hasn't proven, to me at least, that they can at least get through bumpy situations, and I believe that they will find themselves in a scenario where they do make mistakes and they do cost themselves a few games, which put them out of conference contention. But it's possible that they could win all 4 of those games in late September, and then the game against Ball State, and then the game against Northern Illinois in late October. So it is possible they can get up to 10 wins. Don't count that out. But I have them suffering some bad breaks during the season, and I had them finishing 6-6 and 4-4 in the MAC. Alright, so now let's continue on with the Northern Illinois Huskies. This is the 3rd to last team that we're going to be talking about today. The NIU Huskies, they're head coached by Thomas Hammock, who's in his 5th year at Northern Illinois. Last season was a bit of a disappointment, as Northern Illinois finished 3-9 and 2-6 in the MAC. However, one of the reasons as to why they finished so disappointing was because of the fact that they had a bunch of injuries, including an injury to their starting quarterback, Rocky Lombardi. But this season, they're getting them back. They're getting a lot of their players back, and they should be once again a pretty good team in the MAC conference this year. So looking at their schedule, they have to play 2 Power 5 conference teams on the road. That's Boston College and Nebraska. And they also have they also have a home game against a decent Tulsa team. Now they will be much improved, and they will be in a really tight MAC West Division race. My realistic expectations for this team is from anywhere to get from 6 to 9 wins. I have them starting off the season at Boston College in a loss on September the 2nd. I talked about that game early on in my Boston College portion of the ACC video. Expect this game to be extremely close. Northern Illinois has always played really well against teams from Power 5 conferences, and that'll be no surprise here, because Boston College is not one of the best teams in the ACC. They're an okay team, but they're not great. So I can see them being in a dogfight with Boston College, but they'll lose that game. Then I see them beating Southern Illinois. And that's the same thing with the Nebraska game. Nebraska's not the best team in the Big Ten by any mile, and they're not one of the better teams in college football. So it is possible that Northern Illinois can compete in this game as well, but I see them losing that too. And then I see them picking up a win against Tulsa to end non-conference play at a 2-2 record. And then we have 4 conference games before the bye week. As you can see, I had them splitting those. So I have Akron. I have Northern Illinois going 4-4 before the bye week. They'll lose to Toledo and Ohio. but then I see them picking up wins against Akron and Eastern Michigan. Now it's funny because this entire schedule, I have them alternating between wins and losses. So a loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. Then coming out of the bye week, a loss to Central Michigan. Then a win against Ball State in the Bronstock rivalry game. Then they'll lose to Western Michigan, and then they'll beat Kent State. So I see them alternating wins and losses throughout the entire season. I know it's kind of weird, but that can happen, especially to a team like NIU. So I see them finishing 6-6 and 4-4 in the MAC this season. Now, as far as other games that they could win other than the 6 that I have them scheduled, I have them beating Southern Illinois, Tulsa, Akron, Eastern Michigan, Ball State, and Kent State. But what about those extra 3 wins that I could see them getting? Well, I can't throw out the Boston College and Nebraska games. Those are games that they could win. And then I also think they could beat Central Michigan and Western Michigan as well. So those are 4 games that they could win. And then I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to pull off an upset against Toledo or Ohio either. So I think they can win any of those 3 games. All the games that they lose in this prediction schedule of mine, I could see 3 of those games being wins in any order. But I don't think they'll get more than 9 wins this season. I don't think they'll have a double-digit win campaign like in previous years. But I do think they will be a solid team once again this season, and they'll be a force to be reckoned with in the MAC. So I see them finishing 6-6 and 4-4 in the MAC conference this season. Alright, now we're going to be taking a look at the Toledo Rockets, who in my opinion are the best team in the MAC West Division. They're head coached by Jason Cando, who's in his 9th year at the University of Toledo. He has a 54-32 record. Last season, Toledo finished the regular season 7-5, but they finished 6-3 in the MAC, and that includes their win in the MAC championship game against Ohio and their win in the Boca Raton Bowl versus Liberty. They have a somewhat formidable non-conference schedule, as they have dates against Illinois and San Jose State. Illinois is a road game, and San Jose State is a home game. They should be the top contender in the MAC West Division this season, especially when they have DeQuan Finn coming back at quarterback. That offense can really do some damage, and Toledo has one of the better defenses in the MAC. So, they're an overall good, solid team that is going to be around for a while. Now, my reasonable expectations for them anywhere from 8 to 11 wins, excuse me. I only see them losing 2 games this season, and that's against San Jose State and Central Michigan. The Central Michigan game they could win. I just feel like Toledo's going to have at least 1 conference loss this season. And even though Central Michigan doesn't have a lot of high expectations coming into this year, they're still a team that's formidable enough to where they could, win a game against, one of the better teams in the conference. So, and then also I have them losing to San Jose State. Again, Toledo can win this game. I just feel like they will lose at least 1 non-conference game. Non-conference schedule includes, like I said, Illinois on the road and San Jose State at home. But they also have Texas Southern from the FCS and crappy UMass on October the 7th. So that means they'll at least get 2 wins. I see them picking up an upset at Illinois. I talked about it in my Big Ten preview or my Big Ten prediction. Illinois they're a good team, and they're going to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten this season, but it's not like they're prone to losing games against group of 5 quality opponents. So, I think they'll pick up a win at least against, Illinois and Texas Southern. And then I think they'll blow through most of the MAC conference. I think they're better than a lot of these teams. Western Michigan, Northern Illinois, Ball State, Miami of Ohio, Buffalo, Eastern Michigan, and Bowling Green. Some of these teams are pretty damn good as well, but I just think that Toledo's better than most of these teams. Although, like I said, I do see them having a hiccup in conference play eventually. I see them going 10-2 and 7-1 overall in the MAC. 11 wins. I don't think they're going to go undefeated, but it's possible they can at least become the Group of 5 champion and become a team that plays in a near 6 bowl game. But I'm pretty confident with my predictions here with the Toledo Rockets. I just think they're going to be a dominant team, and to me, they're by far the best team in the West Division. I know it's going to be a tight race with a lot of these teams, but Toledo will be in first place at the end of the regular season. So, Give me 10-2 and 7-1 for Toledo this season. Alright, now we're going to finish off our last team we're going to talk about in the MAC, and that's the Western Michigan Broncos. Western Michigan is head coached by first-year man Lance Taylor. Taylor comes into a team that finished 5-7 and 4-4 in the MAC last season. It's a transitional period for Western Michigan. They had PJ Fleck for a while before he went to Minnesota. And I forgot who was their last coach. I forgot to look that up. But Western Michigan was one of the better teams in MAC football for a long time. And now things are definitely changing. Last season, Western Michigan finished 5-7 and 4-4 in the MAC. Their non-conference slate could present problems as they got to play St. Francis of Pennsylvania, Syracuse, Iowa, and then Mississippi State. So 3 of their 4 non-conference games are road games against Power 5 conference schools. They could be in early talks for a MAC West division title, but don't expect them to be in the conversation by the time November comes around. Realistic expectations, I feel like Western Michigan is in a rebuilding phase, and they'll get anywhere from 3 to 5 wins during the season. I don't think they'll make a bowl game. I see them starting off with the win against St. Francis of Pennsylvania from the FCS on Thursday, August 31st in Week 1. But then after that, I see this team losing their next 8 games to see during the season. They'll lose to Syracuse, they'll lose to Iowa, they'll lose to Toledo. I think they'll lose to Ball State, although that could be a win. They'll lose to Mississippi State, they'll lose to Miami of Ohio, which could be a win. They'll lose to Ohio, and they'll lose to Eastern Michigan. So I think the 3 games that are most likely for Western Michigan to win are against Ball State and Miami of Ohio, and possibly even Eastern Michigan. But I see them dropping 8 straight games to get out of bowl contention. So 1-8 going into the bye week, their only bye week of the season. And then they'll win their next 2 games to make their record more respectable. At 3-8, they'll beat Central Michigan on Tuesday, November 7th, and then they'll beat Northern Illinois the next Tuesday on November 14th to have a 3-8 record. And then they'll lose the last game of the season, which is on Tuesday against Bowling Green on November 21st. So I see Western Michigan finishing 3-9 and 2-6 in the MAC. I believe that they could squeak out a few more conference wins, namely the Ball State game, the Miami of Ohio game, maybe even the Eastern Michigan game, maybe even to a certain extent the Bowling Green game the last week of the season. But I just don't think, I think that Western Michigan, since they're in a rebuilding phase, I don't think that they're going to be really competitive throughout the season. They could be competitive in a lot of their games, but I don't expect much from them at all this year. So as a result, I have Western Michigan finishing 3-9 and 2-6 in the MAC. And then that's going to do it for my 2023 MAC football predictions. So just to recap, in the East Division, I see Ohio coming out with a 7-1 record. They're in first place. Then I see Miami University and Bowling Green tied for second place at 5-3. Then Buffalo will finish 4th with a 4-4 record. And then Akron will finish 5th with a 2-6 record. And then Kent State will finish in last place at 0-8. In the West Division, I have Toledo finishing first at a 7-1 record. Then 4 teams tie for second place at a 4-4 mark, with Central Michigan, Northern Illinois, Ball State, and Eastern Michigan. And then Western Michigan will finish last at 2-6 in the West Division. As far as my MAC championship game prediction goes, I think it's going to be a rematch of last year's MAC championship between Toledo and Ohio, and I believe that it'll finish with the same result. I believe that Toledo has way too much talent for any team to stop. It is possible that Ohio could beat Toledo, but I'm not super confident in that. Ohio's a really good football team. Expect them to be back in the situation, but I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Toledo this year. I think Toledo's going to be even better than what they were last season, and I think they're going to be conference champions again. So I have Toledo beating the Ohio Bobcats in the MAC championship, and I have Toledo winning their second consecutive conference title in a row. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's try to keep this momentum going. I've been getting several views for several of my videos, and hopefully that'll continue up. Hopefully by the end of tonight, I should be able to post my top 7 games for week 0 in conference in college football this season. So since the college football season starts next Saturday, I'll take a look at my ranking all the games from week 0 from worst to first, and I'll give a little bit of my predictions for each game, and then I'll do point spread picks before the games start next week, and then I'll try to also dish out the final 2 videos for conference predictions, that being the Mountain West and Sun Belt. I still have to get through those 2 teams, or those 2 conferences, and hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember, once again, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Take care.